Hi everyone. So in this video we're going to be talking about the assignment for writing project number 2 as well as the assignment for the writing plan for writing project number 2. Um, if you have not yet completed writing project number 1, I want you to go ahead and focus your energy on that. And then as soon as you get writing project number 1 done, then you can move over here to writing project number 2. Try and do that as quickly as possible, but I'd prefer that you're not working on the two assignments together because it might confuse you. So please try to get writing project number 1 completed before you start working on writing project number 2. So here is the assignment for writing project number 2. I say for writing project number 2, you are to write about the metaphorical language in any one of the following poems: Persimmons, Dothead, or Of the Threads That Connect the Stars. So you just choose any one of those poems. No comparison or contrast, only one poem. Okay. As I say here, your project should begin with a clear thesis, right? Everything needs to have a clear thesis. Your project should begin with a clear thesis. That is, at the beginning of your project, you must clearly state what you want to prove. So, using the Latin deli as an example, of course, you cannot write about the Latin deli, right? Because you can only write about one of these three. I'm just using it as an example, so I'm not providing you with a thesis for your actual project. But if you were writing about the Latin deli, it would say a possible thesis would be: in the Latin deli, Judith Ortiz Cofer uses metaphorical language to show us how even though immigrants willingly come to the United States, they can still feel a deep longing for the places that they have left. So this mentions metaphorical language, and it tells us very specifically what that metaphorical language is doing, how it is helping get a particular idea across, and we have what that idea is. And so, as I say here, the second bolded part of the sentence is vital to your thesis. You must discuss exactly what the metaphorical language is telling us, right? That's why we need to know this part here, right? That even though they willingly come to the United States, they can still feel a deep longing for the places that they have left. So you've got to have that very specific idea of what the metaphors are supposed to be getting across. As I say down here, you must be specific in that second part. So for the Latin deli, you could not, be clear, you cannot do this. Sometimes I don't like to put the bad example because students will use the bad example. Do not use this. This is a bad thing, right? But I'm showing you what not to do, right? So you could not say, in the Latin deli, Judith Ortiz Cofer uses metaphorical language to show us how many immigrants feel, right? The problem with that is it doesn't tell us exactly how they feel. Your thesis should be much more specific than that. It doesn't need to go into examples yet, but it needs to be like what we have in the bold up here, right? How do they feel? Well, even though they willingly come to the United States, they can still feel a deep longing for the places that they have left, right? That's a very specific sense about how they feel. Just saying we use metaphorical language to show how many immigrants feel is not going to be enough here. Okay? And I say notice that the first one tells us specifically about the conflict many immigrants feel about having left their homes. And that's what you want. You want this up here. You do not want this up here, right? You need something that's going to be a bit more detailed. All right. I say down here you must use specific quotes from the text to back up your ideas. That is, you need to show us exactly what the metaphors say. So instead of saying Cofer shows us that the old man is homesick, you don't want to do that because, well, he's homesick, but what does that mean, right? How do the quotes really show us that? A better thing would be to say, when Cofer writes about the hunger of the fragile old man, she is using hunger as a metaphor to show us how deeply the old man misses his home. And so see how that second sentence more clearly goes back to the thesis, right? The thesis was about how the metaphorical language shows us how even though they willingly come to the United States, many immigrants can still feel a deep longing for the places that they have left. Okay, a very specific statement about how the metaphors help us understand a very specific idea. So Cofer shows us that the old man is homesick doesn't really get us to that, right? But when Cofer writes about the hunger of the fragile old man, she is using hunger as a metaphor to show us how deeply the old man misses his home. That more clearly goes back to the thesis and clearly mentions the metaphors. And we would then go on to explain how the idea that using hunger as a metaphor becomes so important, because if you hunger for something, it's a physical thing. If you hunger for something, there's the idea that you might die if you don't get it. I mean, that's why we feel hunger in our body, because our bodies are saying if we don't get something to eat, we might potentially die, right? Most of the time, throughout the day, we're not in danger of actually dying, but we understand that feeling means so much. Our bodies react to it so much because it's important to keep life alive, right? And so, what one of the things that Kofer is potentially saying here by using that hunger metaphor is saying that desire for the homeland, the desire of the place where we came from, feels like that, right? It feels physical. It feels painful. It seems like we won't be able to survive without that. And that metaphor helps us understand the depth of the emotion there in a way that simply saying he misses home would not make us feel that way. And so it's understanding how the metaphors operate help us understand the larger ideas that we're going to have here. Um, uh, Realize that I say that this project needs to be 3 pages long in an MLA format. I also say any project with improper MLA formatting or a similarity score of greater than 35% and turn it in will receive a 1, and you need to contact me about how to receive full credit. So it needs to be, we've practiced MLA formatting. You should have that down. If it's not in perfect MLA formatting, I'm going to kick it back to you and say, go ahead and put it in MLA formatting, right? So really make sure that your MLA formatting is done correctly. I will change those grades, right? So it's not a sense like if you do the MLA formatting, now you failed this assignment. It's just that you're going to need to go back and redo it and then resubmit, and then I will change the grade and get a full grade. Also, if you have a similarity score of greater than 35% on Turnitin, if you see that little assignment in there, I'm going to give you a 1, and I'm going to say, let's talk about why that's happening, right? Let's make sure we're clear about why specifically you might have such a high Turnitin score. Again, what that Turnitin score means is that I'm seeing a lot of these, the computer is seeing a lot of these same words somewhere else. And so does that mean that you're using way too many quotes? Because if you're using too many quotes, it might end up at more than 35%. Does that mean that you're potentially copying some things from the internet? Because if you copied things from the internet, that's going to be at more than 35%. So again, it's not it doesn't necessarily mean that you've automatically failed. It just means that there's an issue here that we need to discuss. And so I'll give you a 1, and then we'll talk about that. This says major project number 2, but it's actually major project number 1. Rubric. And so the rubric says here that the essay has a clear thesis that addresses how metaphors help advance the meaning of the poem. The thesis is supported by quotes from the poem. It shows an understanding of metaphorical language. The essay is well organized, and it's free of grammar and mechanical errors. And so those are the issues there. Oh, it is major project number 2. I said major project number 1. I don't know why. I get confused. I switch them around sometimes. So that's what you'll need to make sure that you're working on. And again, I will mark this on your rough draft, and then you'll need to think about improving that for your final draft. So that's the actual assignment. And then we have the writing plan assignment, which is, there it is, the writing plan assignment. So the writing plan assignment is just like your previous writing plan. You need to have 2 parts, and so the first part you're going to state the thesis of your writing project, right? Then you're going to state the topic sentence for your first body paragraph. Then you're going to tell me what those quotes are for the first body paragraph, and then you're going to repeat that over and over again, right? This is the exact same text as what you had for your first writing plan. And as I say here, if part 1 of your writing plan is longer than 300 words, it is too long. way too long if it's over 300 words. So again, sample of the first part of the writing plan. In the Latin deli, Judith Ortiz Cofer uses metaphorical language to show us how homesick the people who come to the deli are and how deeply they long for the places that they have left, right? That would be your thesis. Paragraph 1. Cofer uses the metaphors to show us that food means more than the customers than something to eat, but helps soothe their homesickness. And these are the quotes that I might use. Here's the food: canned memories, suspiros and merengues, the stale candy of everyone's childhood. My next body paragraph would say she uses metaphors to show us that the store has a religious atmosphere, which helps with those homesickness. And I can talk about the green plantains hanging in stalks like votive offerings, and she is the patroness of exiles. Then I can say this metaphor she uses to describe the deli owner makes the owner seem like family, which shows how much they long for home. The family portrait of her plain white face. The metaphorical description of the old man's grocery list shows us that shopping at a deli is a way to forget how much the immigrants miss their homeland. The list of items that he reads to her like poetry. So, again, that's what this looks like. So, when you do your first part of your writing plan, it should look like this. And again, this should be familiar because this is exactly what you did for project number 1. And then part 2 of the writing plan is just like what you had before. I chose the Latin deli because I often go to these kind of stores. All right. This is where you're going to talk about why you chose the poem, how you prepared. Again, this is almost the exact same text as for writing plan number 1. I just changed things from story to poem, substituted in the Latin deli. So you should be familiar with that. So for this week, then, you will need to complete your writing plan for project number 2. But again, as I said, don't do that until after you've done everything for project number 1. If you cross these two things, there'll be an issue. So if you haven't yet completed project number 1, complete everything you need to do for project number 1. Work on that, and then you can start working on your writing plan for project number 2. As always, if you have any questions, make sure to contact me.